Hey, maybe you've had those guys on the bikes with the white shirt and the tie and the name badge come by, and they wanted to talk to you about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon missionaries, and you've been curious and you thought, man, I want to learn more about that. Well, I have a book for you to take a look at. My name is Bryan Catherman. I'm with SaltyBeliever.com, and today I am reviewing Dr. Travis Kerns' new book, The Saints of Zion, An Introduction to Mormon Theology. Now, before I get started, I think I need to be transparent here and say Travis Kerns is my friend. I really respect him. We do ministry together in Utah, and we're buddies. So there's that. However, I think that Travis would be pretty upset if I let our friendship influence an honest review of his book. So I'm going to give it the best shake I can, regardless of the friendship that we have. I think he'll respect me even more for that. So, Travis, there you go. All right, let's take a look. Let's jump in. The book is called The Saints of Zion, An Introduction to Mormon Theology. It is published by B&H Academic. It came out in 2018. It's got some pretty fantastic endorsements here from a wide variety of people involved in various ministry. It's got just a good printing. It's a good book. It is printed on an academic publisher. B&H Academic could be used as a textbook in an undergraduate class, or maybe this could be supplemental material in a comparative theology type class, in a master's level course, or maybe some doctoral level work. It is written to that caliber, so don't be surprised when you pick it up if it doesn't feel light and fluffy. It is an academic book. That being said, it's not written in such a way that it's overly boring, overly complicated. Kerns does a really nice job of laying out the structure of his arguments, and so it is a accessible read for those who might not have a lot of academic experience with this kind of topic. I will say before I jump into that this book is probably not the very first book you're ever going to read on the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or the Mormons. It's a theology book. It's an introduction to theology. So he deals with these very major pillars that hold up the theology, or what this church believes about God, and so he deals with it in that sort of academic way. He has spent more than half of his life researching the Mormon Church and Mormon theology. He did work in his undergrad work on it and work in his master's level work on it, and then that was the focus of his PhD level work. So the guy is very knowledgeable. I would say at times almost too knowledgeable. I was looking at some of this going, man, this is so much stuff that at times I thought this is almost hard to keep in my head as I'm working it out. Now, and here's what he did. I think again, before we jump into how he broke this down, I think it's very helpful to realize that his goal was to write a book that a Mormon academic or a ministry leader in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would read and say, that's true. That's what our prophet said. It was taken in correct context. That's what a professor at BYU said. Because what he did is Kerns quoted large sections of material from, it's kind of complicated and he gets into it. There's not really an official material that says there's an official Mormon theology, but from the professors and from the church leaders and from their publications, he tried to go to the most original sources he could, and he provided lots of information, so it's not coming out of context. So the greater majority of the book is quotes from those sources. And then if you turn to the back, and it's really very impressive, the bibliography is 20, 30 pages of just citation after citation after citation, most of which comes from LDS professors, LDS church leaders, the various publications that they would generally say are official canon. And he's just really tried to be as fair as he can. Now, at the same time, he's also presenting the material to answer questions of these major theological pillars. So he opens the book up with an introduction to Mormonism, and this is why we should study and research the topic, why it's important, what are some of the objections. He also there talks a little bit about the difficulties of this book, simply because there isn't one official position, and in fact there's not even one official church of Mormonism. I'm in Salt Lake City. That's the headquarters for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But as he points out, there are lots of splinter groups that have come off from the original vision of Joseph Smith and many other things. There's many, but he spent the majority of his effort focused on the group that's here in Salt Lake City. So if you don't know much about Mormonism, you're going to want to get kind of an overview first. Or if you're reading this book for for the introduction of Mormonism, I would suggest maybe starting in chapter 5 where he starts with history and organizations. Then when you jump back into chapters 3 and 4, you have a better understanding of this leader that he's quoting or this discussion or how this is more meaningful because it came from this particular leader. If you don't know the organization or structure, that is a little bit challenging. Okay, so then what he does in chapter 2, 3, 4, and actually 5 is he takes a look at the foundational pieces of Mormon theology. Who or what is God, and how do Mormons view that? How do they understand sacred texts, their canon? To what level of trust do they give to various documents? Is it inerrant? Kind of how all of that works and why. Just quoting the various individuals, showing us, the readers, what Mormon officials have said. And then he moves on to salvation and what is salvation in Mormon theology and how maybe does it differ from how others view salvation and what's necessary for salvation and why. And then the history and the organization gives you some background as to original vision things and how the church is structured and organized and why it is and what that means for how they view their theology. And then chapter 6, he decides to tackle probably one of the big questions that we have when we look into Mormonism and the Mormons want to project back. And when we have these conversations, it becomes maybe the difficult debate factor. He says, are Mormons Christians? And so to go through that chapter, he has to really get at how do we define a Christian? Are we talking on the same plane? What does this look like? How do we answer that question? He does that in about 230, maybe 240. I'm looking right now, 235, 36 pages maybe. Of material, plus the book is well indexed. There's a scripture index that includes the LDS canon of scripture, plus there is a fairly limited but available subject index. And then of course this giant bibliography of his cited sources, which by the way, most of which are from LDS professors and LDS sources. So he's trying to be as fair as he can be. All right, so let's go back here a little bit. You've kind of heard my initial critique is this is not probably the very first introduction you have to Mormonism in general, but it is a really good introduction to Mormon theology. There were so many things in here that I learned. I went, oh, that makes so much more sense. If that's the foundation, then the pillar that's going to be built on it is going to cause people to think or communicate in this way or that way. So I found that incredibly helpful. I found it so interesting at times that I'd just be reading along and kind of get lost in it. I found it very informative. Then there were other times when there was so much stuff that was so heady and not hard to read, but just hard to think about altogether. It was hard for me at times to really stay focused on the idea. I'd have to pause for a minute and go, okay, I can't process as much stuff as Travis Kerns has provided, because Travis is a really smart guy. So I'd have to kind of go back and read a little bit and think about it for a minute. So if you're just looking for the book you can read in 2 or 3 minute snippets, this is not going to be that book. You're going to want to be able to sit down with a decent chunk of time and really dig in. But if you do, I think you really benefit from the amount of material you're going to get from this book. So there's my brief video review of Dr. Kerns' book, The Saints of Zion, An Introduction to Mormon Theology. I do recommend this book. If you are curious about Mormonism at all, I recommend it. And honestly, I would like to hear maybe from some LDS folks who are trying to see if it's got a fair shake. If this is really truly what you believe, I'd be interested to know how well he did. I found the book very helpful. I kind of suspect that if you pick it up and read it, you will too. Thanks.